it's Anne-Marie Cross, known as the Podcasting Queen. And today, or this particular segment, is Wednesday Wisdom Training. And for those of you who are watching or maybe catching the replay today, you're probably thinking, hang on a minute, today's not Wednesday. I know today's not Wednesday here, but it's Wednesday somewhere in the world because we always seem to be calling in from people's futures. And yesterday I had an opportunity to join Brian Kelly on his particular podcast. He had a cancellation and I jumped at it, which meant I needed to change my schedule up a little bit. But today I wanted to present the training that I had planned to share yesterday, because that's one of the things that I want to do every Wednesday, is just share a little bit of a snippet or training that perhaps I've trained some of my clients or that I've learned and that I've implemented in my business and I found really helpful. And so today I wanted to share three steps that you can follow to help you to create content that engages, that educates, and that entices your ideal client to want to work with you. And I actually mentioned those three key steps, the engaging, the educating, and enticing yesterday on the podcast. And it's something that I often share on my podcast. And it's actually a principle that I've been following for quite some time myself. So hopefully this is helpful for you as well. So whether you're creating a piece of content that you are sharing and it's only like 5 minutes long, right through to an hour-long training or piece of content, right through to even, if you're presenting a day workshop, you can use these same principles to be able to structure your content to make sure that it engages with your ideal client, that it educates them. And for those particular clients or ideal clients who are ready to make that move, that call to action, when you present that to them, that they are inclined to do that because of the fact that you've provided really valuable information. So I'm sharing this across a number of different platforms. However, if you do have a question, you are on live and you want me to answer that while I'm going through the training, go ahead and do that. If you're watching the replay, love for you to do #replay. And if you've got a question, by all means, or a comment, by all means, share that even after we've finished the live, and I'll be happy to answer or make a comment after we finish. All right, so let's dive in. So firstly, the thing that you need to consider is really, what problem are you trying to solve? And often when I'm working with clients or even business owners and they've got content that they want to share, particularly if they have been developing their expertise over a number of years and they've got a lot of value to contribute, it is so tempting to try and want to give our community or our ideal clients everything that they need to know and that you want to share with them. But the thing is, we often forget that it has taken time. And for some of us, it's decades of information and learning and training and just getting in there, getting your hands dirty and finding out ways and solutions to be able to overcome issues and problems. But all of that knowledge, if we want to impart that all in the one go, can often be overwhelming for clients. And so what you don't want to do is be so overwhelming in the content that you're creating that everybody who is struggling with an issue kind of leaves your training thinking, oh my goodness, I'm even more confused than I was to begin with. So often you need to be clear, you need to define that, but keep it simple. Keep it to one specific outcome, so that at the end of that training, whether it be 5 minutes long, 15 minutes long, 50 minutes long, a day long, whatever, that people walk away going, yes, I have more information and actionable information that I know is going to make a difference in my business and in my life. So what problem are you trying to solve? If you haven't clearly defined that in one statement, one sentence, then you need to spend a little bit of time, because that is really going to determine the entire structure that I'm going to be sharing with you. So often if you're struggling, it means that you haven't clearly defined the one problem that you're going to solve. If I think about my ideal clients, one of the most common things that I hear over and over and over again is, Anne-Marie, I have decades of experience or years of experience and knowledge to offer, but I just struggle to get my message out there. I feel invisible. I feel like the world's best kept secret. Help. And that is where a lot of my my content and what I share helps my ideal clients with. So what problem are you trying to solve? The next step is looking at the purpose of the content from two angles. Two angles. So the two angles, well, the first is for you, and then obviously for your ideal client, the person who you want to share that knowledge with. Now, the purpose from your specific aspect of or angle of your content is, what is the outcome that you want to have happen? So for many of us, if you're sharing a particular piece of content, if you're creating a podcast episode or a podcast series, you need to ask yourself, what is the overall outcome that I want from that podcast series? And often what's the action that I want the listener or my ideal client to take after I complete this training? Because that is going to determine the content, the specific pieces of content that you're going to share. Because what you want to do is you want to educate and you want to provide value, but you also want to include a call to action for those people who are ready to take that next step and who think, what, I really loved what this person is sharing with me today, and I want to learn more. And not only that, I want to learn more from them, because obviously there could be 100 or even 1,000 or more consultants and specialists and experts that they could choose to work with. However, you've created such an engaging experience in how you bring that message across and who you are and how you show up. When you're talking about that brand experience, that unique style and characteristic and approach that only you can bring to that topic, that resonates so much so with your ideal client, and your expertise shines through the value you've offered, that ideal client, when you share that call to action, which is really an invitation to take that next step, he or she will go, yes, I'm ready. I want to know more. I'm going to do this. Okay. So what is the purpose of the content? And then also, what is that call to action that you want to take, them to take, that invitation? Now, from their perspective, if you have identified clearly what problem you are trying to solve, then you also need to think of, well, what is the purpose of the content? What do I need to share? What are, kind of the outcomes that I want for them? You might find that through through the expertise that you share, there is a sequence, there is a process, there are steps that you sequentially can take people through before they take that next step. So let me give you an example. If I'm thinking of the work that I do, and it's under the term podcasting with purpose, often people assume that I will dive straight into the technologies, the equipment that you need. But, I will often say you need to worry about the message before you concern yourself with the make and model of the microphone, because you can't edit and mix engaging, educational and enticing, compelling content from substandard content. So you need to really focus on how you're going to set yourself apart. What are the key content, the expertise that you bring to to your particular podcast, as well as your unique experience that you're creating. And if you haven't clearly defined that yet, you're not yet ready to press record. And you can have the most expensive microphone, and it's not going to give you the impact. It's not going to deliver you the influence that you're wanting to build, and ultimately the impact that you want to leave in the lives of the people who are listening to your podcast. So there is this natural sequence. So a lot of the training that I do beforehand and the sharing that I do is sharing with people what they need to have in place, what they need to have clarity on, what they need to consider before they press record. So for you, it is looking at what is the sequence. So what do I need to start off with first? And you may do a series. I mean, I've just recently completed episode or call it podcasting mistake number 7 of the 7 podcasting mistakes that aspiring thought leaders make when it comes to their podcast. So every week we've been sharing a particular mistake, and that's built a series. So I'm sharing this so that if you see that you want to create pieces of content, you can break them down into a series and develop it and share it that way. to come back online. Here we go. That's the joys of doing things live, isn't it? That every now and again the internet needs to catch up. All right. So after determining what the purpose is, your purpose from your business point of view, and where you want to take your ideal clients through who are listening or watching or reading that content, and the purpose that you're going to share for them, what are the points that you need? Because you've got that sequence, but in this particular training, what are the points that you need to share or that you want to share that is valuable for them? And what I tend to want to do, let me just see what the next slide is. Might go back. Okay. So I love to do things in threes. Three is a really good number. Maybe five. I wouldn't do more than five because that can kind of get overwhelming. But three is a really great number, particularly if you are wanting to share content that is valuable, gives someone some food for thought, allows them to have a bit of a mini win because all of a sudden they know something they didn't know. They now know something they had no idea of or that they've been struggling with, and now they found a solution that gets them a bit closer to the outcome that they're looking for. And that's what you want to leave people with. So 3 is a really good number. And so consider, what do people need to know? 3 steps. I always love sharing things such as, just to give you some ideas on what your 3 steps may look like, some of the common mistakes that people make, some of the things that they may be doing that they realize is no longer valid, no longer relevant, or maybe because of shifts in the marketplace and things that through your expertise that they need to start to change. So, mistakes that are being made. I really love also talking about myths or misconceptions. So the things that are, that are no longer relevant. And you may even be incorporating some things that you've learned from a different industry and being able to shape that and integrate that into the work that you're doing so that people can get some really good results. And that's quite unique. So, that might be something that you want to share as part of that as well. And then, of course, some of the things that they need to do and, some of the practical steps that you might want to share. Don't give them everything because, again, you're going to be overwhelming. It's not from the mindset of you want to hold things back, but rather you want to give them just enough that people can have a mini win, they can have a shift of thinking, a bit of a breakthrough, and a win. Because so often, I think as business owners, we stretch ourselves too thin from a learning point of view, don't we? We take on too much. And then when things feel overwhelming for us, what we end up doing is just throwing up our hands and going, you know what, this is too hard. And we get distracted and, we never solve that problem. So as someone who has expertise that is going to make a huge difference in the lives of your ideal client when they take action, consistent action, because that's all it is, isn't it? Consistent action every day, doing another step, taking another step, making another decision. That, if your ideal client takes action in the content that you're sharing, that they will have a win. But you also know that if you provide too much, they're going to be overwhelmed. And overwhelmed people says, too hard, too confusing, not for me, and off they go. So what points do you need to share? 3 things. Keep it simple and keep it focused on the purpose and the outcome that you have already determined. All right. So the next thing that I wanted to share is about a bonus powerful headline. By the way, this particular process that I'm sharing with you now is a process that I use when I'm creating my own podcast episodes, when I'm helping clients create their own podcast episodes. If I am doing a webinar, you can even go back and watch this particular training to find out, to see this in action for this particular training. So one of the things that I think is really important is to create a really powerful, compelling headline. I want to share a tool with you in a moment that I use. that I've shared with my clients. And there's another tool that I'm not going to share this other tool, but one of my clients, she got to a stage where, you know how you can get a scoring to say how powerful that headline is, and 100 is just exceptional. I think she got over 100. It was that amazing. Powerful headlines stick out. It's like a subject line for your newsletter. If that is grabbing someone's attention, you know, amongst a sea of emails, or if you think someone Googles information and all of a sudden this fantastic title, or they're going through and looking on their device, you want to listen to a podcast episode, and the title of the podcast episode is so compelling, they go, "Oh, this looks interesting," then that is certainly something that is going to make your headline of your topic really compelling for people to go, "Oh, I need to know a little bit more about that." So let me share what that particular resource that I use. So there it is there, headlines.sharethrough.com. And here is one that I prepared earlier. So for this particular training, I had some ideas. You know, you play around with them and you tweak them. So I started off at the bottom. You'll see the bottom particular. Let me just move my mouse so this you can see the bottom. See down the bottom there's the overall score, there's the engagement score, and then there's the impression score. And what you can do is click on view analysis, and it gives you some feedback as to where you can tweak your headline to be even more compelling. So I started off with 3 must-haves to create content that engages, that educates, and entices your ideal customer. So I had an overall score of 71, engagement 59, and impressions 73. And so what I tend to do is have a little bit of a play, but I wanted to give you a screenshot just to see what I changed and the difference that just changing a couple of words can make on a headline. So the next one I did was 3 steps. So rather than must-haves, I thought, let's just change it to steps and see what happens. I think everything else stayed the same. So the overall score went down to 68. The engagement went down to 55, and the impression went down to 71. So obviously must-haves versus steps, the must-haves had a little bit more oomph, for want of a different word. So it was more compelling, must-haves and steps. So I thought, okay, so I want to bring that back in. Then I thought, let's just add to the sentence, your ideal customer to work with you. So the overall score, as you can see, went up to 69. The engagement actually went down to 52, but the impression, so how many people would, view the analysis, go and have a play with it afterwards. But I'm just showing you what the thought process that I went through with this headline, went up to 83. So I thought, okay, great. Let's see if I add the word now to it. And that increased even further to the impressions of 85. But what I tended to do was delete the word now, because some words, be mindful, there's a balance. Some words just sound too gimmicky or just too pushy, and you just don't want that to happen either. So, but that is such a great tool. I love that. Let me just go back a slide so that you can take that down again. Headlines.sharethrough.com. Now, you may have a headline checker yourself where you put, a headline through and it gives you a bit of a score. Tweak with it, play with it, because your headline is the first thing often that people will see and read. And if you know your ideal client well, and, it's so important to continue to observe and listen, keep your finger on the pulse as far as what your ideal clients is talking about. So that, and when I say talking about, what are they struggling with? What are some of the comments? I love to just sit back and listen to conversations going on. I love analyzing people's behavior. So if I go to a networking event and, you can kind of read people's behavior, but you can also do that on an online forum. How are people commenting? What are some of the phrases that they're using as people contribute to conversations? that is a goldmine of content, and information feedback for you as you are creating content. Headlines we're talking about, of course, in this instance, topics that we're talking about, overall topics that you can bring to to the airwaves of or your podcast, video, articles, all of that. But be mindful of how your ideal client is expressing their challenges and their problems, because if you incorporate that into your headlines, and if you also incorporate the content into your content that you're sharing, so it's valuable in speaking into those challenges and the outcome that they're looking for, that is when your content becomes compelling, because it's valuable. People can see that you are someone who knows what you're talking about, and can certainly be a solution to support them in overcoming their challenges and ultimately achieving the outcome that they desire. So just to recap, these are the 3 must-do steps to create content that engages, that educates, that entices your ideal customer to work with you. So again, just to recap, what problem are you trying to solve? What's that one problem that you're trying to solve? What is the purpose of the content? From your perspective, what is the outcome? What's the call to action? What is the next step someone can take? And obviously, what's the purpose of the content that you're sharing for your ideal client? 2 very different things, perspectives. What are the points that you are now going to teach, because it's going to help someone overcome the problem that you are trying to solve? 3 key points. Keep it simple, keep it educational, keep it valuable and relevant to that. And then, consider a powerful heading. A compelling heading speaks into the issue, also provides a promise of value, because it's also outcome driven as well. And you can ensure that when you do that, every single piece of content that you're sharing, whether it is a 5-minute presentation, where you may only, if you've got a shorter amount of time, you may not have 3 points. You may identify 1 point and dive deeper into that, and then possibly have the call to action as being, if you want to know more, I've what is that call to action? And I would imagine that you've already created some sort of opt-in, some sort of resource, some sort of mini training that people who are ready and they want to know more and they want to have another mini win can certainly go through that resource that you've put together, so you can showcase and support them, showcase your expertise, and really continue to build that know, like, and trust, which we know is so very important. All right, so I hope that was helpful. Let me just remove this. So I practice what I preach. What is that next step? Well, you know what? I just want to know, what are your ahas? Maybe you've got a resource that you've been using to create really cool headlines. Share that. Would love to share that, in the comment section. If you've got a question, a comment on what I've shared today, or you've got some additional information to share, let's see you add that there too. And if you want to know how to go from invisible to influential and profitable with a podcast, and maybe you've been saying for some time, really need to start a podcast. 2020, maybe that's your year where you do start that podcast, then sign up for my free podcast series over at annemariecross.com/podcast series, annemariecross.com/podcast series. So next week, hope to see you on Wednesday, my time. And hopefully this has been helpful for you, giving you some insights and another resource to add to your resource kit when it comes to creating really powerful headlines for your content. Bye for now.